How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we welcome you to your Season 7 College Football Playoff Selection Show. And of course, we had a number of teams throwing their hat into the mix with the College Football Playoff on the line in Conference Championship Week. But of course, some topsy-turvy results led to the 4th seed ending up for grabs. And we do finally have that reveal. The team to make the College Football Playoff is going to be number 1 LSU taking on number 4 Penn State in the Peach Bowl, which means number 2 Pitt will be taking on number 3 Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. Those 4 teams end up making up your College Football Playoff. That means a few teams missed out: Clemson, Washington, undefeated Ball State, Cincinnati, and similar, unable to make the playoff. Penn State, the team to win it, or to earn it, in spite of their loss in Conference Championship Week. So with that, let's take a look at the entirety of Bowl Week here, or I should say Bowl season here in 2022. And we'll see the opening games of Bowl Week: Temple, Western Kentucky in the New Mexico Bowl, TCU, San Jose State in the Idaho Potato Bowl, Maryland, Miami in the Pinstripe Bowl. Some new bowls added, obviously, now that we're using college football revamped this year. A lot of different bowls renamed, things of that nature. Gasparilla Bowl, we'll see Marshall take on App State. USC, Boise State in the Las Vegas Bowl. Boise State, of course, won the Pac-12 while won the Mountain West while USC missed out on the Pac-12 championship. Really talented team, but hasn't lived up to expectations this year, has USC. Louisiana at 11-1 will take on UTSA in the New Orleans Bowl. This is one of those games that's basically a home game for Louisiana, but San Antonio is not that far away. And so this game's going to be unbelievable. Louisiana has the talent edge. They're 11-1 this season, but you basically have the team that won Conference USA against the team that won the Sun Belt. That's going to be an incredible matchup. They're both very, very good. Hawaii Bowl sees Air Force and Florida Atlantic get the fun trip out to the islands. Louisiana Tech Buffalo in the Quick Lane Bowl. Tulsa Army in the Military Bowl. North Carolina, Ohio State, 2 teams that underachieved this season in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Very talented teams. Ohio State's unbelievable. Number 8 defense, number 5 offense in terms of yardage, yet they finished 9-3 this season. So they're looking to at least finish on a strong note. The Holiday Bowl sees Syracuse taking on Cal. Baylor, Florida in the Cheez-It Bowl. Independence Bowl sees Oregon against Miami of Ohio. Auburn, Houston in the Texas Bowl. Auburn's had a really good season. Houston, of course, lost in the Big 12 championship game to Oklahoma. Texas, UCF in the Armed Forces Bowl. Coastal Carolina, Oregon State. Coastal's first season at the FBS level, 9-3, though they did get blown out by Pitt midway through the season. Very good year for them, though. They'll be in the Red Box Bowl. The Alamo Bowl sees Kansas State taking on Virginia Tech. Couple of 8-4 teams there with some good talent. That should be a great matchup. Texas Tech, UAB in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Washington State, NC State in the Sun Bowl. Ole Miss, Iowa in the Music City Bowl. Liberty Bowl sees Georgia taking on Iowa State. Georgia, another team that the talent level they have year in and year out seems to always play, their record ends up below their talent level. 8-4 this season. They'll look to end on a high note against another talented Iowa State team that's underachieved. And then we'll talk about the New Year's Six here in just a little bit. First Responder Bowl, Oklahoma State, South Carolina. That might be the best bowl game outside of the New Year's Six. These 2 teams were unbelievable. South Carolina nearly upset LSU in the SEC championship game. Their other loss, they lost to Clemson. So really good season for the Gamecocks. Oklahoma State just missed out on the Big 12 title game as well. 2 really talented teams. That should be a great matchup. Outback Bowl, Tennessee versus Indiana. Tennessee's just been very solid, 8-4, and Indiana overachieved this year, 9-3 season. Big win over Ohio State at one point this year. Really good year for the Hoosiers. Hawaii, South Alabama in the Citrus Bowl. Kind of funny Hawaii doesn't get the Hawaii Bowl. Rose Bowl we'll get back to. Gator Bowl sees Florida taking on Louisville. Fiesta Bowl, which we've already mentioned. Sugar Bowl we'll get to. Cotton Bowl we'll get to. Orange Bowl we'll get to. Birmingham Bowl sees Notre Dame taking on Texas A&M. I like the Fighting Irish in that one. BYU, Georgia State in the Lending Tree Bowl in Mobile. And then College Football National Championship will not have North Texas and Memphis. Unfortunately, both those teams finished 6-6, but because of the way we have to do the playoff, they're the two schools that will miss out on their bowl game. They're going to lose their bowl game, unfortunately, so I at least like to recognize them, say they did make a bowl, but to do the playoff, they're going to have to go bye-bye. So if we take a look at the college football playoff, as we've already mentioned, and we'll have a more in-depth preview here later, but Penn State ended up being the 4 seed. LSU ended up being the 1 seed, 13-0. Penn State 11-2. The other teams that were in contention really were Clemson, who also finished 11-2, Washington, who finished 11-2. But Washington just didn't have a signature win, and they got killed in their conference championship game. Clemson had one good win against South Carolina, but they did lose to 2 ranked teams, and they got blown out by Oklahoma State. And then they didn't really have any other signature wins. Penn State has a couple of wins against ranked teams. I think they might have 3. They beat Nebraska already this season. They beat Indiana, and they beat Ohio State. So they have 3 ranked wins, and then their 2 losses. One was to Nebraska, who they had already beaten in a more convincing fashion, and then they lost by a touchdown to Michigan, who's also in the top 10. So their resume stacked up just a little bit better, and that got them in. Plus, they got a little bit of the star power as well. Marquez Gordon was right there in the Heisman race all season. He's going to be a guy fans are going to love to watch in the playoff. LSU, they're a juggernaut, number 1 in the country, one of the best offenses and defenses in the nation. They're, I would think, the prohibitive favorites. Corso's picking Penn State here. That might have been due to who he was picking in the game before we switched the teams around. But he likes Penn State to pick the upset. We'll see what Lee is like in that matchup. Fiesta Bowl. Pitt is the number 2 seed. They're the other undefeated here in the college football playoff, but they're taking on an Oklahoma team that might be the hottest team in college football. They have 1 loss, and it was by 1 point. Otherwise, they've pretty much obliterated every team that they've played on their schedule. Again, we'll have a more in-depth preview later on for this matchup, but it's going to be a tall task for the Panthers, to say the least. Oklahoma, not only do they look really solid, they won the national title last year, so they're battle-tested. Pitt, we know, was in the national title game 2 years ago, but last year they had a bit of a down year, finished 9-4, so we'll see how things shake out for the Panthers in what's now going to be their toughest test of the season. The remaining New Year's 6 games, number 1, the Rose Bowl, of course. These are your 2 teams that pulled the big upsets in Conference Championship Week. Nebraska upset Penn State, UCLA upset Washington, and so they're going to face off in the Rose Bowl game. UCLA with the talent that they've maybe not lived up to this season. Nebraska, one of the best defenses in the entire nation. They're going to try and use their great rush defense to shut down what's been a pretty solid UCLA rush offense that has Chris Sanders. When he gets off the mark, he is unbelievable and very tough to stop. In the Sugar Bowl, we got 2 at-larges in Alabama and Michigan. These are 2 teams that if you take 1 loss away from them that was a bad loss, they're right in the college football playoff picture, and they could have maybe got in at 11-1. Penn State falls to 11-2. Michigan had beaten them. Michigan 11-1 maybe gets in over 11-2 Penn State, but Michigan lost to Rutgers earlier this season, which is insane. And Alabama lost to Auburn the final week of the season, or 11-1 Auburn is probably in there because their only loss would have been to number 1 LSU. And so we might have seen a Bama-LSU matchup, because if we take a look at their schedules, we went the long way to get there, but Alabama, they had just 1 loss, and they had been obliterating everyone, and then they lose to Auburn at the end of the season to really kill their chances to sneak into the playoff. Michigan, all season, had been really good. They only had 1 2-point loss to Indiana here that was their only blemish. They beat Penn State. They beat Nebraska handily, beat Ohio State, really good resume, beat Notre Dame 38-10. So they actually have the better resume than Penn State, but they have this huge blemish here, the 35-28 loss at home to Rutgers. Just completely took them off the radar from the get-go. They worked their way back up and had a great finish to the season. Gets them into the New Year's 6, but unfortunately it causes them to miss out on the playoff. Washington as well misses out on the playoff because of their big loss, and Cincinnati's the same way. Cincinnati 11-1, but they could have been 12-0. That's going to be the real storyline of all the teams that missed out on the playoff. It's not so much the big wins that they don't have, do they have a weak schedule? It's the losses that they couldn't escape. Cincinnati's been unbelievable all season. A.C. Reese is a one-man wrecking crew for Cincinnati. It's great to see him really come to fruition with that change of scenery, leaving Pitt and going to Cincinnati for his redshirt senior year. after struggling so much for the Panthers in his time in Pittsburgh. Great to see him play well in Cincinnati. Versus Washington is the opposite. They got a young up-and-coming quarterback. Sophomore Tristan Richards is fantastic as well. So that's going to be a great showdown between two really talented signal callers. And like we mentioned, Cincinnati, if they don't lose this game to Tulane because of how dominant they've been all season and the fact that they went 12-0 last year before losing in the New Year's Six, if you had another undefeated regular season, Cincinnati would have been in the playoff. But that blemish to Tulane, Washington, all they had to do was win. It got to the very end, and it was basically them or Penn State. Whoever won more convincingly probably would have made the playoff, and Washington got boat raced by UCLA. So still going to be a great game between those two schools. And then your final New Year's Six game, this is where you see Ball State, the undefeated. You actually have two Group of 5 teams made the New Year's Six this year, which is very, very rare. But Ball State, you couldn't leave them out. 13-0, taking on 11-2 Clemson. Clemson, of course, with their loss at Pitt, misses out on the playoff. Ball State misses just due to the fact that, in spite of the fact they got the number 1 defense in the country by yardage, number 6 offense, they've played nobody. They ain't played nobody, Paul. You take a look at their schedules. Clemson, of course, the reason they miss out, they don't have a single ranked win on the schedule other than the win over South Carolina. They do have the loss to Pitt and the blowout loss to Oklahoma State. They also have 2 FCS victories, so that takes away from their win total as well. Ball State, they've beaten nobody. They've played 1 team that's above 500 and only 2 teams that are 500 or better. They beat them both, but they struggled against Buffalo, only won by 7. They beat North Texas fairly handily, and they've done pretty well, but they've even had close games against teams that aren't great. 31-24 against a 5-7 Virginia team. There's just no way Ball State was going to get into the playoff, but they get a chance to prove their mettle in the New Year's Six, taking on Clemson, and I don't think there's any way Ball State competes, but we'll give them a fair shot. So it's going to be an unbelievable bowl season. Can't wait to see how that shakes out. Let's take a look at some of the awards with bowl season now completely revealed. Let's take a look at the awards that are given out here before bowl season gets underway. And, of course, we touched on this one in the last episode, but we'll bring it up again. Heisman winner, Taylor Savage. Runner-up last season to Dustin Young, the Ole Miss quarterback who was drafted, I believe, 5th overall by the Eagles in the Madden franchise that I'm running alongside this one. If you want to see more updates about that, check out my thread on Operation Sports. And if you, in the college, you do want to see potentially some interesting stuff about that, let me know. Maybe we'll do a video here for that Dynasty. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments. But Taylor Savage, unbelievable season. He's going to take on Pitt and try and win his 2nd straight national championship if he can get to the College Football Playoff Championship game. 44 TDs, 4 interceptions. Because we carried this Dynasty over from my previous Dynasty file now to College Football Revamped, and because we moved Pitt from a created team to a regular team, we had to lose the file, which means we don't get to see his stats from the previous season. But he's just been unbelievable his entire career. Junior, 3 straight seasons, probably the number 1 pick in the draft next year. Marquez Gordon, redshirt sophomore, really good player, 36 yards a game, 9 touchdowns, really talented player. Probably going to come back for next season and be one of the best players in college football and have a chance at the Heisman next year, unless he goes off in the playoff. But I could see him coming back with so many good quarterbacks likely to be in the draft. The 5th finisher in the Heisman was Calacolio from LSU, and he's going to be a top 5 pick as well. 46 TDs, 3 ins. He had better passing stats than Savage. Incredible pocket passer. And your 2 running backs, Darion Williams Jr., 1,600 plus yards and over 20 touchdowns overall. And then Justin Martin, a wrecking crew for undefeated Ball State, 22 touchdowns, which I think didn't need to when you're running like that. So some really talented players. Savage, though, the man to finish with the hardware. And so we'll just show you kind of the offensive awards because those are where a lot of the players I've edited for the Dynasty file already are. I'll have to finish editing the defensive side before we can show the awards. But Calacolio ends up winning the Maxwell Award. Savage only finishes in 4th. Calacolio ends up winning actually the Maxwell Award and the Davey O'Brien Award, a most outstanding player and best passer in the country. And with his passing stats, it made sense. Marcus Gordon, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. 2nd again in that award race. A lot of quarterbacks here. in this one. And you can see CJ Kirk actually finishes in 12th in the most outstanding player in the country, the Maxwell Award there. Walter Camp Award, Darion Williams actually wins that one. Running back taking it this time. Gordon runner-up yet again. You see a bunch of running backs actually got some consideration in this one, so a little bit different voting pool. If we go to the Davey O'Brien Quarterback Award, obviously Calicolio wins that one, as we already saw. CJ Kirk, I assume, maybe could be, 12th yet again. There's so much young talent. Tristan Richards, like we said, for Washington. D.D. Harris, senior, dual threat for Ohio State. Steve Tate, and I mean, all of these guys that are seniors are going to make the jump to that Madden franchise that I've been talking about, and may provide some updates on here in the future. Doak Walker, best running back in the country, ends up being Darion Williams, as was to be expected. Unbelievable season for him. The guy was just a top recruit coming out of high school from Alabama, went to Alabama. He's been incredible for him. Won a national championship his freshman year, and now he's bringing home the individual hardware. Chris Turner from Auburn, really good season. Justin Martin, as we already mentioned. Chase Johnson was actually second on Texas A&M's depth chart to start the season. He ends up having an unbelievable year. We'll see if he goes to the NFL or decides to stay for another year. Bo Brown, incredible player, but really undersized, so it'd be fun to see him maybe like a Darren Sproles type of player at the next level. Devin Blake, I think this guy could be a bell cow at the next level. Ja'Shawn McNeil, Ernest Poole, some really good players here. Andre Camp, Doak Walker as well, so another Panther there. Biletnikoff Award, Sino Rogers finishes 8th. Lawrence Lucas of Penn State, he'll be in the college football playoff, and he wins the Biletnikoff. Adam Chandler, you have to wonder if he had an inside track at the award if he had not gotten hurt, because he missed, I want to say, he only played in 9 games this season because he had 1,000 yards receiving and 111 yards per game. So he played 9 games. If he plays a full 13, he's probably your Biletnikoff winner. But some really impressive seasons. Jacoby Sutton, unbelievable for LSU. Christian Williams for Oklahoma, great year, even though Austin Hall's been the guy getting the ball a lot in the conference championship week. But some really talented players. Derek Stuckey for Virginia, Eric West from Tennessee, guys that we played against this year. Malik Thornton as well. A lot of guys that we played this season end up on this list. Jordan Adams from Nebraska, another user-created recruit way back when that's been unbelievable. Mackey, best tight end, Jess Hooper from Michigan. Probably a first-round pick. This guy's a monster. Great size, great receiver. Could be a future stud. Braden Gibson, 14 touchdowns for the senior. Kind of came out of nowhere, and I think he could be a late-round pick as well. Deion Thomas, true freshman for South Carolina. Unbelievable player there. Colin Moore. We got Rico Keys. Iowa just brings out incredible tight ends. Another freshman, Wayne Childress with a good season. Pierre Bentley from SMU. Some really, really talented players that you love to see on the offensive side of the ball. Kicker Award, Johnny Midday ends up winning the Groza. Unbelievable season for him, 28 of 32, 51 of 52 on extra points, and he just knocks through game-winning field goals on the reg, as we've seen. Best returner ends up being DeAnthony Hamilton as well. Fantastic season for him. Griffith from Tennessee ends up being second, but unbelievable year for DeAnthony Hamilton. Did have the punt return for a touchdown, and his average was just fantastic as far as returning is concerned. 36 yards per kick return when he did bring them back, and 13 yards of punt return. So really good year for him. Like I said, the defense awards we'll look at in the future, but wanted to show some of those offensive awards as part of this episode. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Bowl week set to get underway. We'll have one more episode before our college football playoff semifinal. We're going to have a preview episode. We're going to preview both semifinals. It's going to be Pitt, Oklahoma preview and Penn State, LSU preview. Can't wait to show that to you guys and get the games underway. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.